thank you for accepting my interview invitation. I know we're from different continents and time
Mm.
zones, so I really appreciate you finding the time to talk with me, despite your busy schedule and everything. So we only have around 30 minutes, so
Okay.
I'll try to cram in as many questions as possible.
I'll try to answer as many as I can, if I can.
Okay, so let me briefly introduce myself.
Yeah.
I'm Evelyn Chao. I'm a high school student from Citadel Friends School in Washington, D.C., USA. So when I first got to know you from LinkedIn, and
Yeah.
then your book, I felt very inspired from your multiple
Mm,
titles. From as far as I know, you're a business strategist, you're a poet,
mhm,
and you're
mhm,
a chemist. And to
mhm,
me, like those are really like quite different fields, and you have
mhm,
expertise in all of them. So, I automatically immediately like became curious about your life's journey.
mm.
And so I wanted to, learn more about you and your work. So, a quick question first. In addition to these three titles, I'm business strategist, poet, and chemist. Are there any titles you want us to know about you? For example, I mean, I see you introduce yourself as like the business he artist. Is there any meanings behind that title?
Well, first of all, I don't want to know by any title. If my art is known, I'm more than happy. Then I know that I've done something meaningful in my life. I honestly, literally, don't believe that title define who we are or the quality of our being.
Yeah.
I always say that the quality of what we do depends on the quality of our being, and that's my focus and my attention. So please, no need to refer to titles or remember any titles. I can give you a little bit of background on what is behind the word business artist.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is really a way of giving a name to what I think is fundamental, and we are lacking. So bringing the heart and the arts back into um, business, the so-called ballrooms, environments, which typically would demand to people to live the heart and the emotions and the feeling out. And first of all, it's impossible scientifically because despite everything we think about, we are not rational beings, but we are emotional beings. So there is no switch. We can switch the feelings out, the emotions out. There is no such thing. So the claim already of living out the heart, the emotions is absurd. Is absurd scientifically. Forget about all the other reasons for which they are absurd. So basically, it's a way of underlining and highlighting the fact that at the center of everything I do, there is the heart and the arts, the art practices. That's it.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I think what you're doing is really amazing. So by the way, so as a high school student, who is still exploring my academic
Mm,
interests, I'm very curious about how you developed your interests in all these areas and how you turned your interests into expertise. And if I
mhm,
may ask you to reflect on your life journey since your student, years, and could you
mhm.
briefly tell us about your story about how you developed your life, yourself from a student to
Mm.
who you are today? And are there any milestones, moments, or turning points that particularly shaped your life?
May I ask you your age, if I can, if it's not
Yeah,
inappropriate?
I'm 14.
Okay, okay. So I could technically be your mother. No, it's just for me trying to give you examples of something um, you could relate and I can still remember of that age. So first of all, I like to share this is a very personal story, and
Mhm.
I always tell this story every time somebody asks me, but you are a scientist, you are a poet, how is that even possible? As you said at the beginning, see,
Yeah.
almost seeming like so different and so far apart. And to me, they are not. So I'll tell you this personal story. When I was a kid, so around, I think, the age of 8 or 9, I would say that when people would ask me, what would you like to be when you grow up? I always said, I want to be a poet, I want to be a designer, and I want to be a crazy scientist. Literally said that. And people would say things like, no, you cannot be the three of them. You have to pick one. Excuse me. And then they would add, yeah, but poetry, design, that arts are not jobs. You have to be sensible and rational. And I don't know about you, but maybe among your fellow students, there are for sure some artistic people who have heard growing up, or maybe still now, no, 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 that's not a job, that's a hobby. You shouldn't. And of course, at that age, I believe that.
Mhm.
And as I said, I had a passion for science, so I pursue a career. First of all, I pursue studies in chemistry. I got a master in organic chemistry, in pharmaceutical chemistry, and a PhD in organic chemistry. And I pursued a career in the pharmaceutical world. And for those years, I've forgotten poetry, designing, painting. I literally forgot because I believed that they were not essential and important. But then, as I was busy with my corporate career, first of all, I would notice that people would always seek my help because of my creative skills, because I could find creative solutions to what they were, banging their head against. And so that those were already clues that that creativity was still alive within me, and it's natural to all of us. It's not that we have to go to a particular school or a particular training to become creative. We are naturally, that's innate to all of us. It's just that we convince ourselves that we are not, or we have to get a particular diploma to call ourselves creative or artistic, and that's not true. And then, in a very difficult and challenging moment in my career, actually, poetry, so that same um, way and desire of wanting to express myself through arts since I was a child, came back in a very strong and way. And I started writing poetry. And there is this sentence I always say: I became a scientist to cure people and wrote poetry to heal myself. And
Mhm.
as that came back very strongly into my life, I started thinking, but wait a minute. As a child, I wanted to be a poet, a designer, a scientist. How is it that the schools, jobs don't foster this multifaceted nature that I have and others like me? Well, at that time, I did not know that others had it. I felt a little bit like, excluded, that I had to hide. So, and I started thinking, how can I bring all these facets of
Mm.
me into what I do?
Yeah.
Why do I have to choose between being this or that? I am all of this, and I wanted to be all of this. And that's when I took a leap of faith. I took a lot of courage and designed for myself an environment where I could tap in all of these passions, facets, practices. And that's when I actually created my consulting company. So here, the moral of the story, as someone would say, is literally the the fact of paying attention to what
Yeah.
lifts us up. And
Mhm.
of course, the conditioning growing up, it can be very strong. Or we believe to adults, we believe to our teachers who tell us, no, 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 this. But education was never meant to
Mm.
make us employable. Education was meant, has always been meant, to make us, uh, a fuller, a more complete, a more resolved human being. Is not meant to teach skills so that we can be employable. And
Mhm.
especially today, this doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
First of all, because we have technology that can and should replace us for what
Hmm.
is are those mundane skills and repetitive skills and maybe sometimes even dangerous skills that technology can support us and so can lift us from labor intensive labor.
Yeah.
And second, uh, it, education should uh, focus on human development and human flourishment. So if we don't find that in traditional educational system, I think we have a responsibility at any age to find it for ourselves.
Mm. That seems like a lot. So like now I'm curious, like, like you're doing so many things. Like how could you please describe like a typical day in your
There is
life?
no typical day in my
No
life.
typical day.
There is no typical day. First of all, I don't have a 9 to 5 job.
Mm, yeah.
I don't clock in and I don't clock out. I always say that my attention is in supporting people and organization that want to um, pay attention and go on a journey, on a path of human development or cultural artistry. So my focus is helping people to develop, to evolve, helping organization to practice what they say that those are their values so that their culture can be embodied and not just a poster on the hallway at the entrance of the cafeteria. And so my line of work is within human development and cultural outreach with individuals and organizations and based on the struggles
Mhm.
or on the choices that an individual or an organization are called to make, i I offer my support and my services.
Mm, okay. Um, so so now let's just like switch over and talk about your book, The Poetry of Leadership,
Mhm.
A Journey into the Leadership of Self. So I am particularly interested in this book because I also like writing poetry and I like to explore leadership topics. So
Mhm.
how did the idea of evoking leadership by the use of poetry come to you?
Okay, first of all, I have to say that the poetry of leadership is inspired and is a selection of my collection of poetry that's called The Whisper, a lyrical conversation with the multitudes. And that's pretty like thick book of poems, which I wrote almost in one flow as an expression of the conversation I was having within myself with all those facets we mentioned about. And so the dance the dance between what the role, as you said, the role, the titles, and what is deep within us. So the tensions and the paradoxes that one needs to bridge to embrace of all we are. And as I start bringing that book into organization, into work with one-on-one, people would always ask me the same question. And how do we continue when you go away? How do we continue practicing poetry and embodying dialogues, artistic dialogues within our teams, our organization? How do we do? So one day, like after hearing it and hearing it and hearing it, I said, okay, I have to do something for all of those people. So I've selected some of the poems from The Whisper, and I have created poems and practices to help so someone can do by reading the poem and doing the practices that are part of the book can start their own journey without necessarily my presence there and guiding them there. And as I
Mhm.
always say, So we have created for leadership a myth that is so far out there that we have to sacrifice all of who we are, and we have to work hard and hustle before we can call ourselves a leader. And nothing of this actually makes sense to me. And I always say, if for just 1 second, a fraction of a second, you substitute the word leadership with the word humanship, what
Mm,
comes to mind? What qualities can we tap into to help and evoke the same humanship, the same leadership in others? To me, is really the work and the practice of evoking it in everyone.
mm,
I do not believe that leadership is associated to a title and to a role. Of course, there are people who have as for title that, but that does not mean
yeah.
that they are the leader and we sit back and that's it.
Mhm.
And so, with this idea in mind, I've created a practice that can evoke that sense of humanship or leadership so that we all understand what that means, that leadership in everyone.
Mhm. Okay. And how would you understand the roles that poetry plays in leading self, leading others, and leading changes, respectively?
Well, with this, as I said before, with this so much talks about leadership, we always talk about, have you ever heard someone say leading self? No. There is always this leading a team, leading a nation, leading an organization. And and I always ask, okay, how one can lead an organization, a team, a nation without the awareness
Mm,
of what is within inside them. So what triggers us, our mindset, our behaviors. And all this can be discovered and learned through the practice and through the attention that poetry can offer us when we practice it. So I don't look at poetry or any art in particular as a form of entertainment. It is a practice. It's a way of expressing what is within ourselves. Once we become aware of what is the world inside us, then we can start think, okay, what can I do?
mm,
So, but by this I mean is this is the journey that starts first with self and then eventually can evoke the same into others and as large into the world. So I always say that forget about leading change, because there is a lot of talking about leading change and leading transformations and blah blah.
yeah.
Yes, but what about if we can't even change ourselves? How can we can change someone else? Would you like if I would come to you and say, oh, you have to change? I'm like, and who are you to tell me to change? I mean, nobody. So it's like, show it to me, embody it, and then maybe I'll be inspired to do the same.
Mm, okay.
And that the qualities that poetry and art practices invite us are attention,
Mm. So,
listening,
yeah.
bridging things that look like apart, engaging into dialogues.
So, well, okay, so what is what is the essence of human aspect of the leadership's experience? Like if you would if you were asked to define that aspect in a few words or a short sentence, what would you say?
Well, first of all, there are so many facets to leadership, that as many as we are on this planet. First of all, so I always say, okay, what makes, and that has always been my guiding inquiry, my beacon I always follow, what is that makes all of us human?
Yeah.
And we are all, when we are, really embodying and embracing the fullest of our humanity, both light and the shadows, is um, this desire of being loved, being heard, being seen, belonging.
Mm.
It's a sense of purpose, giving meanings to our actions and what we do. So those qualities that we don't need a title we don't need a title to be, to be
Mm.
fully human. I think we just need the courage to embrace wholeheartedly what that looks like and what that means. And that cannot be reached
Yeah.
through through an Excel spreadsheet. It cannot. It will never be. And it's literally a journey inward to discovering what meaning looks like for us, what purpose is, or as a matter of fact, what is the purpose of life. And the purpose of life is only one: evolution. So how can we evolve with life? And and these qualities that we can, first of all, practice as we practice art. And second, we can express them. There is no way we can express them in a PowerPoint presentation. Actually, that will kill it, will literally kill it. And so when we, I'll give you an example. People in organization, in advertisement, in marketing, talk a lot about storytelling.
Yeah.
I I would disagree that that's true storytelling. That could be a way of manipulating. So is crafting on purpose a story to manipulate the desires of someone else. Something else would be sharing a story,
Um,
like, for example, I have done a few minutes ago, sharing my own personal story. You can relate or not relate to it because maybe your life experience is different, your background is different, but you'll never feel like manipulated by it because that's the truth at the core.
mm.
And that's an expression that comes out of a human being and reaches another human being that can relate to that.
Mm.
And of course, there are tools that one needs to learn to, write better, paint better, craft a message, and so on. But that do not make the story, that do not make the connection. We have to look at inside what drives us, what is the meaningful story that we want to tell, and why we want to tell that story. Why was important for me to tell that? It was important for me as a child to be a poet, a designer, and a crazy scientist. What is at the core of that?
Mm. Thank you. Your insights actually, it reminds me of a quote actually from your
Mhm.
book. Um, it's it was poetry with its paradoxes challenges the myths and practices of those organizations overly focused only on outcome, profit, and results.
Mhm.
So, so when I read that quote, I asked myself, what else should an organization focus on other than the outcomes, profits, and results? And now after talking with you, my understanding now is that an organization should also focus on like it's people, including those who work for the organization and those served by the organization, like their feelings, their passions, their needs, and
Mm.
even their dreams. So, is this understanding appropriate?
Well, first of all, every understanding is appropriate because that's your understanding in the sense that, or my understanding, they are all valid. We understand things according to our lens. The Anais Nin always said, we see the world as we are, not as it is. And I truly believe that because we all carry mindsets lenses through which we see. So everything is valid. And I think that's the other beauty of art. You know, if you read a poem and I read the same poem, we have a different understanding or a different feeling, and they're both valid. They both can exist. And that's the inclusivity of art, something that it can never be possible outside, outside the artistic practices. So,
Yeah.
but having said that, I was asked in a podcast, I was speaking about organization and how much of these organizations struggle with engagement, which
Mm-hmm.
is like all the compass and the thermometer of how good or how bad the situation is or the culture is. Or there is a lot of talking about, employee not being engaged. And this applies also to students not being engaged. And the interviewer asked me what is the opposite of how we would counter the lack of engagement, and I said with care. So
Mm-hmm.
if we, all of us, would care,
Mm-hmm.
would focus on care, how things would change. If the main driver of an education system, the main driver of an organization, the thing we would focus the most as individuals would be care. And if we would embody that care, how things would change. And with this, I'm not saying forget about your profits and forget about your outcomes. I'm not saying that. But what if you cared
Yeah.
not only about your bank account? What if you cared on the way? How the world would be. So how you would design a manufacturing line that will not pollute the water
Mm-hmm.
in the environment. How would you design even the building where you're hosting people? If you would care, if you would show care, how would that look like? And to me, that is really one of the seeds of true innovation. And we cannot care if we cannot pay attention, if we're not able to listen, if we're not able to properly express what's going on inside of us or pay attention to what is going on outside of us. We can't. So the question will be, what are then the practices that help us care?
Mm-hmm.
And I go again back there. Those are art practices.
Mm-hmm.
We don't learn care through, I don't know, an Excel spreadsheet or an algorithm or anything else.
So I have three questions left, but I'll just
Hmm.
skip to the last two since it's 28 already. Okay, so March is Women's History Month,
Mhm.
and April is National Poetry Month. So your interview will be a celebration of both. Are there any messages or advice you would like to share with young students and young girls?
Can I read a poem?
Sure.
So I read a poem from the Poetry of Leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if I can find it in my multiple notes. It's a poem very dear to me. And I think that embraces both the feminine, the poetic, the abstract, and maybe it has a message for someone. Let me find it. Of course, I didn't prepare it, so I couldn't. I didn't mark it down. But let me find it. It's found it. So the poem is called "Born with Wings." I was born with wings to learn the difference between strength and softness. I learned strength. To fly, I have to learn softness. So my invitation would be to everyone who will be listening this interview, really to reflect on what softness is to them and what do they need to learn to embrace a little bit of
Mm.
that softness.
Okay, and one more quick question. So, my last question is about the future. And as you know, we're living in an
Mm,
era where technologies, especially like AI, are rapidly like developing. So, what is the future trend of leadership, and how could our next generation, like me, and um, adapt to that trend?
I don't think we have to adapt. Actually, I think that the future is in our hands and it is up to us to create it with care,
Mhm.
with care. And just a reminder that technology can only be as human as we are. So if we want a more humane future, I think we have to be the first one to show it, to embody it. And so I don't think that is about adaptation. It's truly about creating it as a piece of art with a lot of care.
Okay. Thank you so much. Like this
Thank
is
you,
very
Evelyn.
insightful. Like you're doing like you're really inspiring to me.
Thank you, Evelyn. It's encouraging, promising, and inspiring knowing that someone your age reads poetry, and I have full confidence. I really have full confidence in younger generations. I think that uh, they do uh, much more and with more care than older generations have done.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And thank you for this interview. Thank you, Evelyn.
Have a great day.